Thailand, when I got there, there was one stake, and that was in Bangkok. There was, let's see, there was the east and west and north kind of areas. There was one stake, and there was a few branches, quite a few in Bangkok. A few of them were pretty close to becoming stakes, and there was three zones in the so 3 zones in Bangkok, 3 zones, I think so, 3 zones in the Isan, so this is eastern Thailand, and then there was 1 zone up in northern Thailand. One of them was a stake in Bangkok, so we had 1 stake in all of Thailand, and then one of them, kind of 2, were kind of getting close and in becoming a stake in eastern Thailand. I guess they're called districts, not zones. That's right. I'm still thinking missionary-wise and everything. And then there's 1 or 2 that were, well, mainly 1, I think, that was getting close to becoming a stake as well in Bangkok. So there would have been 2. Let's see, by the time I left, while I was there, about halfway through my mission, things had changed. There's a new way of contacting. There was a lot more focus on contacting and much more brief discussions with the people we would contact. So it kind of changed from this idea of talking to people and really getting to know them, then bringing the gospel up with them and finding to more of just asking very direct questions on their interest and learning about the church. At first, where things started to really kind of change, I think, while I was there, was a focus on baptism. And over the years, at least as far as I could tell, there was always about 40, I think a pretty good month was about 40 baptisms. And that had been there, I can't remember when they first started out in Thailand, but that's been there for years, since kind of they've had a good amount of missionaries there. But while I was there, when we started to focus on baptism and focus on finding those who were already ready, in a sense that God had prepared, that we weren't there to talk to people and kind of persuade them as much or help them become ready, but when we just talked to more people, just looking for those who were ready and asked them if they wanted to be baptized, we found more, and we baptized more, and we had goals such as each companionship having 1 baptism, and sometimes there were even district leaders who would have other companionships give up one of their investigators or daters who was about to get baptized because they had to another companionship who couldn't find anybody yet, so that both companionships could each have a baptism. So there's a lot of sacrifice, but there's a lot of unifying the missionaries and the mission. A lot of trust and breaking down of like some literally and figuratively boundaries in our mission, and working together more. And that really helped us to get more baptisms as well. So the unifying of missionaries, being more direct and contacting and talking more to people. And we got just over 100 baptisms in 1 month in November. And I remember the month, it was November, I remember finding out how we reached over 100 baptisms that month, and just getting on my knees and just shocked, I guess, in a sense, just like, how did this happen? This is incredible. What did we do? What was different? Because you try so hard. There are going to be times where you're trying really hard and you're praying and you make goals and you know you're going to reach them, and then you don't at the end. And it's tough, but I guess just as a mission that we prayed for each other every night, were some of our goals, and that we would help each other get baptisms. It was just, and a more focus on baptism, which our purpose in bringing others to Christ, and just baptism being the center of it, helping people get the Holy Ghost, just finding people that God already prepared, people who were there to say, yes, like, I want to know, I want to be baptized. After that, we progressed more and more until we reached 200, over 200 baptisms, about every month on average, I think, sometimes a little less or more, and so it exploded. And the amazing thing about that, it wasn't just in Thailand. this was happening. There are other missions, mainly Cambodia, right next to Thailand. They were also having a huge influx of baptisms and growth in their church. And so just seeing the Lord's eye on Asia area in the world, just like it was, the Lord was preparing the Asia people, to the Southeastern Asian people, for the gospel more. And so that was really remarkable. Another main goal was for temples, to teach about temples and prepare them for the temple, because I think the closest we had was Hong Kong, but you had to fly to get there. So they didn't have a temple near Thailand. And then after Hong Kong, the Philippines, which had two, and maybe I think a third one being built. And then on the other side, that's going east. On the other side of Thailand, going west, there's India. I mean, there's China, Russia, these other places. There's nothing. It's like, it's sort of this big void, I think, in the world where there's no temples. And then you hit Ukraine, which got their temple, and Europe. So it was really important to us. We realized a lot more the importance of not helping our church, the church, grow in Thailand, because our vision was to get a temple. That was kind of the main vision, the very end. So starting there and working back to build stakes, and then get baptisms and retention, keeping them in the church, that was the real growth, so we can obtain that vision to get a temple, so that not only helping Thailand, but all the countries around Thailand, and people in India, people vastly farther away from others, to a temple could go to Thailand. It would be huge in bringing the Spirit to this sort of void in the world. So this last spring conference, general conference, they just announced a temple in Thailand, which was pretty darn cool. It was pretty darn cool. So I'll start with Thailand and then Laos. In Thailand, because they were a little bit different. They're both Buddhist. It's not everyone, but just about everyone's Buddhist that you talk to. And the interesting thing was, there was no commonality or thing that we would notice in people who we found were ready to receive the gospel. There wasn't. We couldn't. It could have been anyone, which was why there was so much emphasis on talking to everyone. We couldn't just let one person walk by, because that person seemed to qualify just as much as everyone else. Not qualify, sorry, but that person seemed to be just as ready as someone else. It could have been someone very poor, low, not a very good living. Their home looks like it could be in shambles and stuff like that. Then it could be someone else who seemed to have already amassed a lot of wealth, or very well off in society. And sometimes even people who, there were Buddhists, everyone was Buddhist, but there were Buddhist people who really practiced their religion, and then there were others who, probably most, who did not, who weren't very spiritual. And some of the most spiritual Buddhist people were actually even accepted the gospel, which was sometimes appreciative, because you saw that they really were spiritual about a religion. So it really could have been anybody. There was no particular common thing that we could find that was that they seemed to attract them to the gospel. A lot of times we did tours, and we just brought them to the church and showed them the church and showed them what baptism was, and there was all sorts of people that we would find. Well, Laos, there's also a lot of Buddhist people. What was particular there, we did find people who were interested. We couldn't proselyte, so we couldn't talk about baptism or God straight out anyway, directly. But there were a lot of Hmong people. They're a hill tribe sort of people, live in mountains. They don't have their own nation. They live in different parts of the world. But there's a lot of them in Laos. And we found some Hmong people who came and brought friends, and they were very humble people. Very interesting background. A lot of them weren't Buddhist or the mainstream Buddhist. religion. Some of them worship ghosts, which was pretty interesting. And when we heard about them, but they were very humble people though, and they wanted to learn, and so we taught them, and we learned some of their language, and we were able to testify to them, and they joined, and they brought families and friends. So that was kind of a something that we found in Laos, that the Hmong people were very humble, although we did find some other Laosians. But at the same time, it was kind of difficult without being able to proselyte in Laos. I served in the year 2012, July 2012, and then came back home August 2014. And my first area was Chiang Rai. That was northern Thailand, and then I went to Bangkok area called Rangsit. And then from there I went to Laos for 3 months. And then I went to Nong Khai, which is just on the other side of the river of Laos. And then after that went down to Bang Kaen, back in Bangkok. And from Bangkok I went to Lampang, so back up north near Chiang Rai, my first area. Then from Lampang to Royet, and then from Royet to Ubon, and that was my last area. And Ubon had just become a stake, so that was exciting too, leaving that area. Then not a year or so after, or no, I think it was about half a year, it had become a stake. So I said before that there was one stake in Thailand when I got there, and now there's 3 stakes. So another one created while I was there, then which was the North Bangkok stake, and then the third one a little bit after I left, Ubon stake. So